Hello, everybody, and welcome to Little Miss Storytime Week. Today we are going to read a story about Little Miss Magic. Alright, here we go. Early one morning in summer, Little Miss Magic awoke in the bedroom of Abracadabra Cottage, which was where she lived. She yawned a yawn and got out of bed. She went to the bathroom to clean her teeth. Squeeze, said the tube of toothpaste. And guess what? The toothpaste jumped up and squeezed itself onto Little Miss Magic's toothbrush. Honestly, Little Miss Magic isn't called Little Miss Magic for nothing. When she tells something to do something, it does it. She went downstairs to the kitchen. Boil, she said to the kettle, and it did. Toast, she said to the toaster. Spread, she said to the knife, and the knife jumped up and spread some butter on the toast. Pour, she said to the coffee pot, and she sat down for breakfast. Don't you wish you could make things to do things like that? She's having toast with butter on it. She was enjoying a second cup of coffee when there was a knock on the kitchen door. Open, she said to the door. And, as it did, there stood Mr. Happy, looking exactly the opposite. You don't look your usual self, remarked Little Miss Magic. What's the matter? Everything, replied Mr. Happy. Come in and tell me about it, she said. Have a cup of coffee. Pour, she said to the coffee pot. Now, said Little Miss Magic, what is it? It's Mr. Tickle, replied Mr. Happy. He's become absolutely impossible. What do you mean? Asked Little Miss Magic. Well, went on Mr. Happy, he used to go around tickling people every now and then, but now he's going around tickling people all the time. He sighed. Little Miss Magic looked at him. It can't be that bad, she said. It's worse, said Mr. Happy unhappily. Cheer up, she grinned. Come on, she said. And off they set off from Abracadabra Cottage. After you, said Little Miss Magic to Mr. Happy. Close, she said to the door. Mr. Tickle was in full cry. What a Monday morning he was having. He tickled Mr. Mean until he moaned, and Mr. Greedy until he groaned, and Little Miss Sunshine until she shivered, and Mr. Quiet until he quivered, and Little Miss Plump until she pleaded, and Little Miss Shy until she sobbed. Not to mention the postman, a policeman, the doctor, 3 cats, 2 dogs, and a worm. Aha! Cried Little Miss Tickle as he spied Little Miss Magic and Mr. Happy. And you went for tickles? And he rushed up to them, reaching out those extraordinary long arms of his with those particularly ticklish fingers at the ends of him. So Little Miss Magic looked at Mr. Happy. I see what you mean, she said and winked. She pointed at Mr. Tickle's extraordinary long right arm. Shrink, she said. And then she pointed at Mr. Arm's extraordinary long left arm. Shrink, she said again. And, as you remember, when Little Miss Magic tells something to do something, it does it. Mr. Tickle's arms were suddenly not extraordinarily long. They were extraordinarily orderly. That's not fair, he cried. You spoil my fun. But it might have been fun for you, remarked Mr. Happy. But it wasn't fun for anybody else. Come and meet me tomorrow, said little Miss. Come and meet me tomorrow, said little Miss Magic to Mr. Tickle. There, she said to Mr. Happy. Happy now? Mr. Happy smiled of that famous smile of his. I'll say, he said. Come on, he added. I'll buy you some lunch. And off they went to his favorite restaurant, Smiler's. The worm's laughing at him. Yeah, the worm right there is laughing at him. On Tuesday, Mr. Tickle went round to Abracadabra Cottage, and he knocked at the front door. Open, said a voice inside. Oh, hello, smiled little Miss Magic as the door opened by itself as she saw who was standing there. Come on in. I expected you like me to make your arms long again, she said. Oh, yes, please, said Mr. Tickle. Very well, she said. Mr. Tickle's face lit up. Oh, on one condition, she added. His face fell. You are only allowed to tickle one tickle a day. One tickle a day, said Mr. Tickle. That's not much. Promise, said little Miss Magic. Mr. Tickle sighed. Promise, he said. Grow, said little Miss Magic. And both Mr. Tickle's arms grew back onto their original long length. Now don't forget, she reminded him, 1 tickle a day. Or else, she added. Mr. Tickle went out through the door. Goodbye, she said to him. Shut, she said to the door. Mr. Tickle stood outside little Miss Magic's cottage. Ah, well, he thought, 1 tickle a day is better than no tickles a day. It was then that he saw one of the downstairs windows of Abracadabra Cottage was open. 1 tickle a day, he thought, and a small smile came onto his face. 1 tickle a day, he thought. And on that Tuesday morning, as one of those extraordinary long arms reached through the open window of Abracadabra Cottage, the small smile on the face of Mr. Tickle turned into a giant grin. 1 tickle a day, he thought. The end. Have you ever done something magical before? Well, I haven't. Alright, now for our next story, we're going to read Little Miss Giggles. Can you giggle and eat cornflakes at the same time? Little Miss Giggles could. Do you giggle while you're asleep? And Little Miss Giggles did. Can you giggle while you're brushing your teeth? Little Miss Giggles could. She was the giggliest girl in the world, and she lived in Chuckle Cottage. But one terrible day last summer, you'll never guess what happened. She lost her giggle. Just like that. Gone. She had woken up giggling as usual. She giggled her way downstairs as usual, and she giggled while she was having breakfast as usual. But while she was walking in the woods around Chuckle Cottage and realized that she wasn't giggling, she stopped. That's odd, she thought to herself. Now, ordinarily, she would have giggled to herself, but not today. She tried. Nothing happened. She tried again. Nothing happened. Oh dear, she thought miserably, and as she walked along, a little tear trickled down her cheek. Yeah, she's crying. She's crying. Poor Miss Giggles. She met Mr. Happy, who was in a usual morning stroll. Hello, Miss Giggles, he laughed. And how are we today? But then he noticed a sad little face. What happened? He asked anxiously. You're the happiest person I know. He paused. Next to myself, of course, he added hastily. I've lost my giggle, she explained miserably. Lost your giggle? He asked in bewilderment. Mr. Happy scratched his head. He said. We'll just have to find it again, won't we? Little Miss Giggles nodded, but not very hopefully. Come on, he said, and seizing her by the hand, and took her off to see Mr. Funny. There's nobody like Mr. Funny for a giggle, he said. But it was no use. Mr. Funny tried and tried to produce a giggle, even a chuckle, or even smile, but little Miss Giggles couldn't. Tell you what, said Mr. Funny, I'll tell you my very latest joke. I made it up myself, he added modestly. Very funny. He could hardly get to the end of the joke for laughing, and when he had finished, both he and Mr. Happy nearly fell over. They were laughing so much. But not little Miss Giggles. It's no use, she sighed. I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life. I know I am. Then she thought, I don't have to change my name, she sobbed, and she started to cry again. Big fat tears. Oh, dear me. Look at her, she's crying. Oh, poor Miss Giggles. Mr. Happy took her to see Mr. Topsy-Turvy to ask him his advice. Morning, good, he said cheerfully, and then caught a sight of little Miss Giggle's sad face. Matter the what? He asked. He always spoke back to front. Mr. Happy explained what happened. Dear, oh, he exclaimed. Then he thought. Doctor, he said. Doctor to see to her take. That's a good idea, said Mr. Happy, and took her straight away to see Dr. Makewell. Mr. Happy told the doctor all about little Miss Lack of Giggle. He said. Pull out your tongue. Not you, silly Billy, he said to Mr. Happy. Little Miss Giggles pulled out her tongue. Looks like you're all right to me, said Dr. Makewell. Open your mouth. Dr. Makewell peered inside. He said again. You're right, not a giggle in sight. I'm sorry, he added. There's nothing I can do for you. You'll just have to wait until your giggle comes back. Poor little Miss Giggles. Mr. Happy took her home, and even by this time, he was not looking its cheerful self. What a sorry sight, don't you think? Why don't you try to giggle? He said hopefully. Little Miss Giggles opened her mouth. Ha ha ha, she said dolefully. He, she said miserably. Ho ho ho, she added mournfully. It was no use at all. I'm sorry I can't get help, said Mr. Happy as they reached the garden gate of Chuckle Cottage. And little Miss Giggles went sadly through her front door and went home to think. The idea came to him while he was having lunch. He rubbed his hands with glee. Tee-hee, he chortled to himself. And later that afternoon, he knocked at the front door of Chuckle Cottage. Who's there? Asked a little sad voice. It's me, called out Mr. Happy. I have a present for you. Little Miss Giggle, looking through miserably, opened the door. "Here you are," said Mr. Happy, and handed her a large box. On top of the box, in large letters, it says, "One Giggle, medium size, this handle with care." Little Miss Giggles looked at the box in amazement. "What is it?" she asked. "Well, what it says it is," laughed Mr. Happy. "You lost your giggle, so I got you another one." That giggle cost me a lot of money. Little Miss Giggles opened the box. "But there's nothing in it," she exclaimed. "But there's nothing in it." "Of course not," said Mr. Happy. "Giggles are invisible." But that's absolutely ridiculous," said Little Miss Giggles. "Is it?" chuckled Mr. Happy. "Of course it is," she giggled. She giggled. She giggled. The end. Yeah, Little Miss Giggles is my favorite. Now, next story we're going to read. This is one of my favorites. Little Miss Bossy. One Monday, Little Miss Bossy was out for a walk. She met Mr. Nosy. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Mind your own business," she retorted. On Tuesday, she met Mr. Noisy. He was singing. Noisily, of course. "Shut up," she told him. On Wednesday, she met Mr. Happy. He was smiling as usual. "Take that silly smile off your face," she said. As you can imagine, Little Miss Bossy wasn't very popular, to say the least. Now, little did Little Miss Bossy realize that somebody had been seen her bossing Mr. Nosy about, and the same that had been bossing Mr. Noisy about, and self-same somebody had seen her bossing Mr. Happy about. The wizard, whose name was Wilfred, went home thinking, "Something really has to be done with Little Miss Bossy," he thought to himself as he walked along. When he arrived home, he went straight to his library and took down a large red book from a bookshelf. It was rather dusty and hadn't been read for some time. "Let me see now," he said to himself as he settled into his armchair. He turned to page 304, and at the top of the page it says, "How to Stop People Being Bossy." Wilfred the Wizard read the page very carefully, shuttered the book, and put it back on the bookshelf and grinned. A particularly wizard sort of a grin. The day after, which was Thursday, Little Miss Bossy met somebody who was fast asleep as usual, Mr. Lazy. "Wake up," she said bossily, and produced him in the tummy. "Ouch," protested Mr. Lazy. Behind Miss Bossy, Wilfred the Wizard, who had been following her, said something too, under his breath. A wizardy word he learned from page 304. And, do you know what just happened? Suddenly, as if by magic, which is true, there appeared on Little Miss Bossy's feet a pair of boots. One minute they weren't there. The next minute they were. Little Miss Bossy looked down in alarm. They were magic boots, and being magic boots, they could speak to each other. "Hello, left," said the right boot. "Hello, right," said the left boot. "Ready when you are," said right. "Right," said left, and off they set. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, faster and faster, marching poor Little Miss Bossy along. Little Miss Bossy couldn't do anything about it. Mr. Lazy was amused. "Well done, Wilfred," he chuckled. Wilfred winked a wizardy wink. Those boots marched little Miss Bossy for 5 miles. She was exhausted. Ready, left, said the right boot. Ready, replied left. Attend, said right. Shun, said left. And they came to a halt. Little Miss Bossy was out of breath. She tried to take off her boots, but it was impossible. Along came Wilfred. Those, said Wilfred, pointing to the boots, are only for the people who are too bossy. Make them go away at once, little Miss Bossy stomping her foot. Well, she tried to stamp her foot, but the boot won't. We're out of stamps, chuckled Right. Left giggled. You will do as I say, shouted little Miss Bossy. Ready when you are, said Right. Right away, replied Left. Quick, march! And off they set again. Left, right, for 10 miles. And they stopped again. Along came Wilfred. Yeah, that's what you get, little Miss Bossy. Idiot. Make these stupid boots go away, shouted little Miss Bossy. Only if you say the magic word, replied Wilfred. Little Miss Bossy thought again. Please, she said. That's better, smiled Wilfred, and said as the wizardly word again under his breath from page 304. The boats disappeared as if by magic. Now then, Wilfred said sternly, wagging his finger, to stop being bossy, or you'll know what happened. Little Miss Bossy nodded miserably. Very well, smiled Wilfred, and went. And you know something? From then on and until now, little Miss Bossy was a changed person. Not bossy at all. And do you know why, don't you? And what she's afraid of? Bossy boots! The end. Alright. So yeah, I think that's about it. Stay tuned for part 2 of Little Miss Reading Time Week.